Just got out of Kill with Ryan. This was supposed to be John Wick on a train. Ryan, was this John Wick on a train?
No, it was more than that. It rose above it, and now it's its own movie with its own identity. We loved it, right?
I loved it. And 20 minutes in, I didn't know if I was going to love it because I was questioning some of the tonal decisions with the romance. They'd play the emotionally manipulative music, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm fully feeling this, but the concept is great, so let's see where we go with it. Yeah, 20 more minutes, and I was all in, edge of my seat, gripping my seat, could not find a time to go to the bathroom. I had to piss like a racehorse. I just had the best time with this film, and Ryan, you were doing the exact same thing.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of this, grabbing my hands, trying to hide my face, trying to hide my eyes to some of the violence, but in a fun way. I was just on the edge of my seat the entire time. And I think those instincts, too, that you have about being concerned about the emotions and the manipulations and things, I think that's us as Americans, like trying to figure out, find flaws, get used to what we're seeing in these movies. I think it's a perfectly natural thing.
Sure.
And thankfully, we always just end up like, yeah, it was for the better. It actually was great. It worked, and it wouldn't have been pulled off that way in an American movie.
Well, it did, and I don't know if I would have been as connected to the characters if they wouldn't have done that in the beginning. So what started out as just kind of emotionally up and down turned out to really get me sucked into that story and some of the shocking decisions that this movie was making. I mean, were you expecting half of the things that we got in the second half of this movie?
No, we're so used to these types of movies doing certain things at certain times. You know, we're so used to these kind of structures, these revenge plots. Usually when we get a scene an hour into the movie, we get it 15 minutes into this movie, or maybe it would flip it on its head and do something early, much later.
Yes.
I mean, we got a title card an hour into this movie, and I can't think of ever seeing that at any point.
Especially in an action movie. Like, I get like an artistic A24 film, but the title card came at the perfect time because that's when I think the second big part of this story kicked in. By the way, this is the loudest truck I've ever heard in my life. But when that started, I mean, the movie became something else in its entirety, in a good way. Now, that's when it became more of a revenge thriller, but it also elevated it to a point of no return. And the brutality of the third act specifically in this film. And our hero in Amrit, he's not a guy who's bulletproof. He's not a guy who's impenetrable. Man, he is taking lick after lick and a beating and a bruising all throughout this movie, man. I couldn't believe some of the things that they were doing to our main character. And then on the other side of things, you've got the villainous side of the story, and they're actually giving them some emotionally resonant moments. Now, you don't care about them. You want them to die because of what they're doing, but we see their perspective of what happens when you run into this force of nature, what our main character is, and they're terrified just like we're terrified watching it, man. How'd you feel about that?
The villains were super interesting because we dealt with a family of goons, and you know, usually it's like faceless guys, and then you have a head at the table in a jacket. He's stoic, and you know, he doesn't see any action at all until the very end, until our hero gets their revenge. That's not at all how this was set up. We got to see these guys have a conscience, like strategize, make certain decisions, and it was just way more complex than we're used to, and I really appreciated that.
I did too, man. The attention to detail in the script, and again, you know, my issues that I was having early on, I actually, it turns out the simplicity was a benefit for this film, but also they're so focused on what makes a movie like this work as opposed to just going off in different directions and all of these subplots. It's like, no, here's what we're doing. If you don't like this type of thing, why did you come after seeing the trailer? It is exactly what they told you it would be, but it turns out that they do it in a way that feels fresh and new and a little bit different, but also the same type of brutality that you're looking for. And I'm looking for those comparisons like John Wick or Bullet Train or Snowpiercer, you said in our other video, or this or that. And it is a little bit like all of those things, but it's also its own thing, its own action-packed thing that I think a lot of people are just going to have an absolute blast with in the theater if you go this weekend.
Yeah, isn't it funny how you can watch like epic trailer moments? Like there's a particular hit to the back of the head. I'm gonna wait for you.
Yeah. There we go. He's loud and proud.
So in the trailer, you see a particular hit to the back of the head. You see it in the trailer, you're spoiled of it. In the movie, it's still crunchy. It still packs a punch. It still makes me want to wince, all because the story behind it. It's just incredible, man. Just a movie of moments. Yeah. It has a story, it has its characters, but it's a movie of moments that you have to experience with people if you can. We had an empty theater, but we had each other at least.
There was some dialogue that felt like over the top. It's like, oh, he's this cool, he's this good at fighting because he's in the army. I'm like, dude, I have one of my best friends in the army. He's not that good at fighting. But then it turns out you learn more about him, and then you get other one-liners that are just, I mean, simply the most badass thing you're going to hear in a movie all year. When he was speaking some of these lines, I'm like, oh my God, no one's going to beat him. They're going to beat him up, but no one's going to beat him. That's how I felt halfway through this movie.
The one that made me laugh is that, they'll get off this train to head to their funeral.
I wrote that down. I got in my notepad and I wrote that down.
To head to their funeral. That's when they'll get off the train. Incredible stuff.
That's the type of and that reminds me, throws me back. You know, Flickinger talks about this all the time with me. Those classic 90s action movies that have such memorable one-liners and dialogue. That's how this felt at times. You know, those films are a little over the top, but they're so memorable in every way. And this is that, and this is one that I want to show my action-loving friends and family, even though it's a little too brutal for some. I want to show them this film, and I want to go on this journey once again, even though, again, those shocking, I mean, just shocking decisions.
It's borderline NC-17.
It is. Yeah. And I couldn't believe what they did to some of our characters that you just don't anticipate. We'll talk about it more in our spoiler-filled podcast on the Movie Mode podcast channel. And surprisingly so, there's a lot to spoil in this film. I don't think the title card thing is a spoiler, but I genuinely, I know we've hit on it already, I genuinely think that's one of the coolest things an action movie has done this decade. I will stand by that.
That's cool,
I will stand by that. And look, I love John Wick. It's just, this isn't that. This is its own thing. And so those comparisons aren't even fair. I was so fascinated to see what Indian cinema was going to do with this concept. They did not disappoint. Ryan, final thoughts for this crazy film.
2 back-to-back Indian bangers. We're super privileged. We're spoiled this summer for sure. It was definitely worth coming to the theater to see. We had to drive a little bit further than we're used to.
Yeah.
But no complaints on my end at all. Sorry if that spoils the podcast, but I don't have any complaints.
I was complaining on the way to the theater because I'm like, man, I hope this hour and a half journey is worth it. Worth it. I'm telling you right now, if this is playing near you, go see this. You don't want to miss it. It was so surprising, and it almost feels like a low-budget indie at times, but then you get these crazy action sequences, and they're so grand, and they're so cool. And the choreography, for the most part, I'd say 90% of it, is so freaking realistic. And again, I don't know what it is about Kalki and now this, the sound design, maybe, I mean, amongst the best of the year. The conversation for the best of the year.
I love the music too.
Yes.
I've loved the music in every one of these movies. Monumental Boys, a movie that we didn't cover, that's another one too. But this is the 3rd Indian movie that we've seen. Always beautiful music.
Especially the chanting when he's, you know, just going through all of those train cars and attacking. It's just like, it made me so pumped.
I don't know how I feel about incorporating gunshots and like timers in your music. Because if it's an action movie, it's super confusing because I think those things are actually going on.
Yes.
And then you're like, wait, that's the song playing with gunshots and bomb timers.
Sure, and again, the romance music at the beginning, I'm like, this is trying to manipulate your emotions, but who cares once the action kicks in? That was awesome. I'll give you my score here in just a second, but we're both pretty happy, Ryan, right?
Very happy.
Very happy. Just got back from my lengthy drive from the theater, and I'm still thinking about this movie, man. I'm thinking about the experience, being almost all alone in that theater with Ryan. We're just having a great time pumping our fists. And again, you know, my biggest issue is that tonally inconsistent opening and that music that feels a little out of place when the romantic scenes come on. It feels like they're just going for something that's so cheesy. But you do buy into that romance because of that. And as silly as it is, it's followed up by some of the most epic, crazy, brutal moments, brutal sequences you're going to see in a theater. And if you were hesitant, like, do I see this or not? Do I need to watch the trailer? First of all, don't watch the trailer. I'm so glad I didn't. Go into it blind. The acting is really good for the most top. Some scenes, again, over the top, but who cares, man? The one-liners, the entertainment factor, and the brutality, and the shock factor caught me off guard every time. So again, we're going to talk about this more on Movie Mode. I'm going to give you my score, but I want to know your thoughts down below. What's the best action movie of the year? Is it easily this, or is there something I'm not thinking about? Monkey Man was pretty good as well. Also, drop a like if you want to support this video. Once it gets going, Kill is a non-stop rush of adrenaline that provides some of the coolest fight sequences of the decade. The mid-movie title card drop is a contender for Moment of the Year. The tonally inconsistent start is followed by some of the most fun you will have in a theater in 2024. Please seek this out. Please go see it. I drove an hour and 30 minutes to see it, which isn't as bad as, it could be, but still worth it. Worth every penny, worth every moment. My check engine light's on. So you know what? I risked my life to see this. I'm about to go record a full spoiler review on Movie Mode. Please go watch Kill.